Good morning. It's an amazing morning. It looks like autumn is finally here. I had to turn the heater on for the very first time. But I love the outdoor, the freshness of the air and the sounds of the birds and the crickets and things so much. My windows are always open. I don't care if there's snow out there, my windows are open a bit. I just won't be cut off from it. I feel for people that work in buildings where they've been foolish enough to seal them all up. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Oh, well, that's the way it's been. Things are changing now. We're taking things back. We're taking ourself back. And in the process of doing that, we'll take the earth back as well. It won't be like it has been. The days of our most intense suffering are over. That's finished. Absolutely done. Now, I apologize for the way the camera's kind of shaking, as if I'm shaking. I have everything else shut down. I don't have another window open, minimized, or anything, only the webcam. And with 3 gigabytes of RAM, you'd think that would be enough for a simple webcam to operate. Although I do have it on more of an HD setting. But, too bad. If it's bothersome, just don't look at the image. The energy flows through regardless. So, as I awoke this morning, of course, even before I get up, I consecrate my day, usually. But as I was moving about, taking my morning things, the tinctures, the probiotics, and finally putting the coffee maker on, it's a beautiful time to commune with the self. I was remembering how again and again and yet again I would get lost in things, in the mind, in the internet, and not make that connection, what I call that sacred connection. It's really beautiful. Even if you have to get up an hour early, if you have to go to work, just to have that time to just be. I don't meditate. I don't have a routine like that. And I was remembering how a year or so ago, what I was doing was, I might not have a TV, but you can get just as involved in the internet. And the programming flows through the internet as well, my friends. And so one thing I like to do is I have an invocation that I make for being surrounded in light, and to have light beings standing guard, mirroring back anything negative that would come my way, so that the sender can get a taste of what they're sending, and I can be at peace and in love here. But anyway, even so, the first thing I would do in the morning would be to check my email, or check the weather, or just get online, And then pretty soon you're pulled into that. And if you're me, you don't go offline until late at night, usually. And so I guess I was so unreachable by Spirit that Spirit had to finally come through in the journals and issue a warning and say that if I wanted to connect up closely, I needed to get off the internet. It didn't say it that way. I don't remember exactly. I just remember getting the warning through the journal to back off from the media. And internet is one form of media. I think it's a more intelligent form since it's easy to get your news from alternative news sources and get something closer to the truth. Frankly, I'll tell you, if you want something closer to the truth, don't listen to news from the USA. BBC isn't the greatest, certainly, but they're better than what we've got. And you'll find other countries are giving out more information on what's going on here than you get if you listen to the standard NBC, ABC, CBS routine. CNN included, Fox News, all of it. I used to like Fox. I tend to be more conservative than liberal because I feel like you're standing on your own 2 feet. It's not that I'm this or that. I just like to stand on my own 2 feet and don't like the idea of government handouts and government having really any power at all. So naturally, I would, tend in that direction. Kismet, no. You don't need to bark at other dogs. He's not fixed. And so he's got a little bit more moxie than perhaps, the average pet. This is the first time I've had a papered, whatever you call it, a registered critter. And it's a little bit different. He's wonderful. Okay, so as I sat here, I was remembering how many times I slipped back into spending too much time connected, plugged in. And just musing on that, how it's so important to be in the present. That's where I find contact with Spirit, is in my now. And we tend to slip out of our now when we're watching a movie or just being online, answering email. We tend to be in the mind. And once again, there's nothing wrong with mind. But what I find is mind takes a much more limited perspective. There is a real, I think mind would even call it magical. There is a real unlimited anythingness that we can connect up with deep in our center, in our quiet time. And it goes so far beyond what mind can see, and the way that it is, the way that it works or operates, or the way I experience it, its very nature violates so many of the beliefs held by mind about what's possible and what's not. And so, it's just more comfortable to put mind in the back seat. And once you start trying to do that, separate out from the mind a bit, frankly, it's not going to go willingly into the back seat. I find, or for me, there was a period where it was in the passenger seat up front with me. And it didn't always stay buckled in there either. Sometimes it wanted to drive. And so I found mine to be rebellious. I mean, it's like the Illuminati. It's been in power. It's been running the show like forever, for the whole lifetime. That's how we're trained. That's how we're programmed. And we don't know anything else, you know? If you don't know the questions to ask, how can you ask them? These things aren't presented to us young enough. Now, our youngsters today, that's different. But anyway, it took a while, and it took a real intensity of focus and will. I had set my intent that my being was going to drive. Sometimes I call it heart. You could call it being, soul, essence, you know. The innermost part of me was going to be in charge. And I had to stay alert because mind was always trying to weasel in. And often it did. And so I would count my successes by the moments I could stay consistently within. And then I'd catch myself, you know, with mind in control for a while, and that would just be the reminder, oops, and I'd go back inside, if I was present. If I wasn't present, I wouldn't catch myself, so that goes together. But anyway, now, I'm not sure about this, but the way I've conceptualized it, if you will, is that eventually mind develops a respect for the goings-on that occur while you're in heart. But mind has to watch quite a bit and see the way things just come together. The synchronicities pile up and all kinds of things that mind couldn't understand before. It notices that they seem to make sense from within heart. And that's just a perspective, folks. I'm not saying that's how it is. But bottom line is that eventually mind gives up fighting and goes along willingly. And so it's so much easier now. Mind isn't always trying to intrude. And actually, I find a lot of times where my insides are completely silent. A silent mind. So, there's that that I was enjoying. When we're silent like that is when we can connect up more with who and what we are. And if you have your intent set to make that connection, you will. You simply will. We are powerful beings, and we will cut through anything. It's a matter of will and intent. And then you make your free will choices as they come along, and that's the method. That's the way of it. That's how we navigate in time, I guess. Something else that's going on with me now that it's changing, I thought I would share, and that is that it's been probably a year ago. I kicked everyone out. All the angels, all the masters, all the beings, all of them. I've stayed open to elemental life, but as far as sentient beings of any kind, I remember I got disgusted when yet another one I had vested a certain amount of trust in. I had thought it was a particular being that I was communicating with, and come to find out it wasn't. And another imposter, you know. And so I shut the door. Now, you cannot choose to just experience angels. You cannot choose to just have cheerful thoughts. Well, I guess you can. Anyway, when you shut yourself down to anything, you shut yourself down to everything like that. And so I realized that I was working with my spiritual guide and beings of light, and that they got cut off there too. But that was just the way I wanted it. This was during the time when I was shifting in my conception of God, who and what is God. I used to sing my heart out in joyful song, and it's mostly the old spirituals and the hymns and things that oh my God, it would just come from the very depths of me, from my toes, the joy and so on. But then after a while I got to where I couldn't, the lyrics just didn't cut it for me. I couldn't find a song that was right, where the lyricist was standing on their own 2 feet and having integrous relationship to divinity. Too many wanting to be saved, too many looking outside the self, too much bowing down. And so I had to set that aside, and that kind of broke my heart. I mean, that's one of my main joys is that song. But to me, nothing's more important than being in right relationship with Source, with God. And I guess I've shared before, we can find God within. We can link up that within. And we don't have to bow down to anyone or anything. We don't need an intercessor. We don't need anything or anyone between us and God. I found that to be a lie. Just something to hold us back, to keep us in charge and in control of someone else, or in someone else's control. I refused to bow down even to any book, any scripture, any writing, anything and anyone. I was determined to find God within. I knew it had to be there, the real thing. And so I had to throw away all my ideas about God, everything I'd been taught. I had to chuck it. And so I even quit praying. I mean, I couldn't. How can you formulate a prayer when you don't know who you're talking to, huh? It was an interesting time as I look back. I mean, I didn't think about it at the time. You just do what heart leads you to do, and you're going to be fine. I don't care what it is. But what I find now is that I'm finally coming out of that. And recently, more and more, I've opened the door of my heart and my being with a willingness to communicate and start the dialogue again with the light beings that are here. They're all around to help us make this transition into higher frequency. The Andromedans don't call it ascension. They have a committee on their council, and it's upliftment. And they say it's commonly done. It's just how beings progress from one level to another. And they like to support that, as we do too. I mean, there's a lot of us that are light beings that have come down from higher dimensions to incarnate here, to forget everything along with everyone else, and to remember, to remember as a group. And so we have light beings above in higher densities and dimensions, and we have light beings incarnate. I would say many, if not most, of our youth are these light beings that have no need to be here for their own development. That's not why they're here. And so we're all recollecting, recollecting. We've been dismembered. We are remembering together. That's what I wanted to share on this bright and beautiful morning, even though the sun doesn't appear there. It's easy enough to remember the sun is always shining, no matter what seems. What's a small layer of clouds on, frankly, a small planet? Huh? That's nothing between you and the sun. We're all one. In spite of any kind of seeming that might get in the way, we can still reconnect with the reality that's within us. Just like that sun is always shining, no matter what. It's always available. Love to you guys. See you again soon. Guys, for the way the camera's kind of shaking, as if I'm shaking, I have everything else shut down. I don't have another window open, minimized, or anything, only the webcam. And with 3 gigabytes of RAM, you'd think that would be enough for a simple webcam to operate. Although I do have it on more of an HD setting. But, you know, too bad. If it's bothersome, just don't look at the image. The energy flows to commune with the self. I was remembering how again and again and yet again I would get lost in things, in the mind, in the internet, and not make that connection, what I call that sacred connection. It's really beautiful, even if you have to get up an hour. Good morning. It's an amazing morning. It looks like autumn is finally here. I had to turn the heater on for the very first time. But I love the outdoor, the freshness of the air and the sounds of the birds and the crickets and things so much. My windows are always open. I don't care if there's snow out there. My windows are open a bit. I just won't be cut off from it. I feel through regardless. So, as I awoke this morning, of course, I mean, even before I get up, I consecrate my day, usually. But as I was moving about, taking my morning things, the tinctures, the probiotics, and finally putting the coffee maker on, it's a beautiful time. People that work in buildings where they've been foolish enough to seal them all up, that's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Oh, well, that's the way it's been. Things are changing now. We're taking things back. We're taking ourself back. And in the process of doing that, we'll take the earth back as well. It won't be like it has been. The days of our most intense suffering are over. That's finished. Absolutely done. Now, I apologize